Hello, I'm Nikki Starr, welcome back to my channel. I haven't done a video with my face on it for a significant period of time, and I'm going to go through why. Firstly, if you're new to my channel, or you're one of the new subscribers that have happened since I've been away, hello, welcome. I'm Nikki, I'm an aspiring author, and this channel is essentially to document that process and also putting up like video timers and stuff so that I can work with them and hopefully you can too. So this is probably going to be quite an honest update, but I want to get you all up to speed on what's happened, where I've been, and why I've not been here. If you've watched my previous video with my face, I did start trying to attempt April's Camp Nanowrimo. Now, if you don't know what NaNoWriMo is, every November people try and write 50,000 words of what is traditionally a new draft of a book. So if you have an idea in you that's just kind of been there for ages and you've never acted on it, or like me, you tend to just rotate through lots of different stories, it gives you an opportunity to get that really rubbish first draft just out on the page. There's no time to edit in NaNoWriMo, there's no time to think, there's no time to second guess yourself, you just gotta keep going. So traditionally a lot of people do their first drafts there, some people will do different things. You can be considered a nano rebel if you try for a different goal, or using a different structure, like going for screenwriting goal, or like you're in your second or third draft, or you're editing, or you're rereading through something, whatever it be. April and July we have what are called Camp Nanowrimos. Don't know why I'm doing that, they are. In April and July we do Camp Nanowrimos. These are a little bit more loose with the rules, even though the rules aren't necessarily massively strict anyway. You set your own goal, you can do whatever you want. If you're a NaNoWriMo traditionalist who always does the first draft in November, you might get to be at the point of editing in April, or you might be wanting to do something new over this few months and then in July you do editing of something through. It gives you a couple other touch points in the year. At the beginning of April, I said to myself that what I was going to do was read through Project Magic, which is a standalone in my main writing world at the moment, which is all around space pirates and kind of science fantasy and magic and shit. But I said I was going to reread through a previous draft I'd done of that and then try and re-outline something, and then also work on some of my romance books that I'm doing. I think I want to do 600 minutes. I think I wanted to do 10 hours. Not 100% convinced of this because I haven't looked at the website in a long time. What actually ended up happening is I had quite a strong start in the first week. I didn't record anything, I just kind of got my head down and started working on it. In probably the second week and going into the third week, I got quite ill. I'm not going to go into massive detail of what happened, but just suffice to say there was a surprise hospital trip that we were not expecting to do. And I can laugh about it now, which is something, I guess. So that did put a slight dampener on those 2 weeks, but I've also still been kind of recovering from stuff. So April was not as productive as I had originally planned. Camera angle may have changed slightly because I just had a phone call halfway through that. So without going into any specific detail, over the last maybe year and a half, I have been getting ill a lot more frequently than I used to, and a little bit more extreme than it used to be. I'm starting to wonder if I'm pushing myself too hard. I did this concept back during the pandemic of mill-wordy and doing 1 million words in a year, and I think having pushed myself through that, even though at the time obviously we were in quarantine for a lot of it, so we weren't going out and being social, and I was doing a lot less of creative things, I'm a lot more sort of spread thin than I used to be. I think there's still a part of me that thinks I can hit that level of productivity regularly, and I cannot, and I keep trying to convince myself that I can. So what this means from May, I have been trying to pare back on a lot of what I am trying to get myself to do. With a full-time 9 to 5, I have 2 YouTube channels, which neither of which have been being updated recently, trying to get through as many of these drafts as possible. Got a bunch of other things that I do. I just can't do it all, and rather than like chucking out a bunch of the stuff that I really enjoy doing, I think I'm just going to try and pare back on most of it. So on this channel you might see less videos of my face, you might see more timer videos, which are somewhat easier for me to produce when I'm having a week where I'm not feeling great or something happens, or if I just need to slow down for a day. What it'll also mean for my writing is I am going to seriously look at all of the goals I am attempting to hit and try my best to give myself more time frame. I want to get as many books done as quickly as possible so I can start querying them, start getting them published out, all of that stuff. But I have to remind myself that I have a 9 to 5, I have other obligations in my life. Like, I have to be able to tidy my house occasionally. I have to be able to spend some time with some friends. I can't expect myself to just churn out creative work over and over and over. So that being said, Project Magic was supposed to be reread and outlined in April. I obviously didn't hit that. And then May and June we're going to be drafting through it. And assuming that we're hitting somewhere between a 70 and an 80k book, which isn't always the case but is often where I land, that's a lot. That could be 40k each month, which is just shy of NaNoWriMo. And if anyone has done NaNoWriMo, you know it is a little bit intense. When I did Milwordy, I did 83k a month and it almost did me in. So I am a little bit worried about using that timescale. What I have got to, where I am, is I have outlined Act 1 and Act 2 with like a new idea of how I want to play it. We're adding another point of view in, but we are going to use a very similar structure to my Space Pirate series because this is intended to be kind of a companion standalone to the world. And I want to write a few of these where you've got obviously the main Space Pirate series that I've got running through, but then there's a few that like world build around them and have their own little stories contained, and in some of them I want to follow some of the characters from Space Pirates, but in this one it's completely different. It's like a generation before all of this is happening, so it has all the same magics, all the same world, but there's slightly different politics happening and we're following different groups of people, and I quite like that idea. But I've used the same like literally chapter structure as I did for my previous draft of the first Space Pirates book. So the idea of having every fourth chapter I have a flashback kind of thing, but I'm trying to do it in 2 points of view. So we've got 2 points of view of the then and a now. It may be way too confusing. It's always been from just one person's point of view, and I've written this particular book now 2 times and they've both been rubbish. So I'm doing a proper outline this time. But I am going to do what I did for the last Space Pirates book. I've outlined, as I said, Act 1 and Act 2. I've not touched Act 3. Now, in the last time I did this, it was because there were a few decision points in Act 1 and Act 2 that I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and I kind of wanted to just see how it felt leading up to the point. And there were a few things that would like open up certain doors or close off certain ones that I wanted to organically kind of write to and then see how I felt. For this one, partly I like the fact that I don't have to force out the act that I'm the worst at when I haven't gone through most of the book. Trying to work out how I want the Act 3 to wrap up when I haven't like found all of the little extra Easter eggs that I end up putting in Act 1 and Act 2, and all the extra like plot holes and stuff that I end up closing at the end. All the things that I want to like add. The reason why I've done it for this one is when I was doing Space Pirates, there were a lot of things that I opened up in Act 1 and Act 2, like little extra things I hadn't thought about in the outline that tweaked the way that the Act 3 was going to go. Or I had a few extra threads that I needed to tie up that I wasn't expecting to have. When I put myself on an outline, I can get quite rigid about it, or I throw it out the window. There's very rarely a middle ground of that. So having the complete flexibility of Act 3 being this blank slate, and when I get towards the end of Act 2, I can go in and go, right, where am I currently? And add in all of the stuff. I'm also not sure on the scale of this book. The premise for this book, I haven't quite settled on the new book how it's going to work, but the premise is very high level, as in it's very governmental, and there's a big overarching thing that's affecting everyone in this particular planet's life. And the way I'm doing Act 1 and Act 2 seems very personal and very much on a particular person's situation. So I don't know if we're going to be able to like overcome the full issue, because I'm being very personal with the actual storytelling without it feeling like I'm forcing this whole thing to like fall down around her ears. So I need to work out, am I looking to like pull down the whole thing, or am I just looking for her to carve out her little space where she can be as happiest as she can? Although I should say they, because I now have 2 points of view. I also haven't worked out a few people's like names or genders, so my outline is very interesting because occasionally I'm just saying the word like parent. I don't know who this is. There's a parent involved. Like I don't know who's going to have what magic yet. I haven't really got fully into the outline of it. I've done a lot of the scenes that I want to see, and I've worked all of those out. But there's little elements where I'm like, and this person shows some magic. I don't know what magic it is. You can work that out as you get there, Nikki. That is kind of the thought process. And if this goes well, this might be my reoccurring thought process of, firstly, use this outline for my first drafts or my 0 drafts. I don't know how we're going to count this. In Space Pirates, we have considered the last draft I did to be draft 2, even though it was a full rewrite instead of a edited draft, just so I can start keeping track of which ones I've done, because I've been writing that book for years now. We're probably getting close to a decade. I couldn't even think. But in this outline structure, using like I've got the save the cat beats next to each chapter and I'm working out what hits each one, but then not filling in the third act until I've written a lot of the book could be potentially the way I do this going forward, if this works again, if it wasn't just a fluke the first time. It might work well with my plantser brain. I've said on the channel before, but I used to be a die-hard pantser. There's no way I'd outline a book. I am going to throw myself in with absolutely no idea except for the overall concept I have, and I'm going to let the characters just run away with me. They're going to decide what they're going to do and I'm going to follow, or I'm going to tell them no and I'm going to throw an obstacle in their way. As I got a little bit older, I realised that was okay if I could get the first draft out, or like the zero draft of it, like throw something on the page kind of draft, but it isn't necessarily the way I want to be able to plan out like full books, especially when I had in my head like this idea of a Space Pirate series, which at the moment is looking potentially like it might be 9 books. I can't do that on the seat of my pants the whole time. So I'm adding in elements of planner, which is usually a vague outline that I do or do not follow. And in the past, it's been quite a long outline, quite a rigid outline, and it doesn't always work. There's always moments where I'm like, this outline didn't think about this thing, or I've slightly started tweaking in the wrong direction, and this outline no longer quite fits what I want it to be. So when I need to develop ways of like balancing these two, and I think this might be a really good one because I can kind of play with Act 1 and Act 2. I'm much more likely to mess around in Act 2. Act 1 of a book, especially if I've already written it, tends to be a lot easier for me to write, and then Act 2 is a little bit wafty and things change, and then Act 3 is just a free-for-all usually. I have no idea what I'm doing, so that does mean that I am unlikely to finish or even necessarily start writing this month. I am recording this probably a little bit earlier than I'm going to release it, so at the moment I'm kind of middle of May. I think this is going to be released at the end of May, and I'm not sure how much writing I'm going to get done. I would like to, but I also I'm really trying to stick to this idea of making sure that I am taking time and I am not forcing myself to do all of the things all of the time. But I think it's going to go beyond June. So the idea originally of having 3 months for a draft, I think is going to be my main change. I'm going to have to either work into like 4 or 5 or maybe even 6. Because the most recent Space Pirates draft, I started in, I want to say I started it in October. I think it was November, and I didn't finish that until March. So we are talking kind of 5 or 6 months. So it might be that I can only get 2 drafts of a book done as opposed to the 4 I was attempting to do, especially as I have a romance thing I want to try and do alongside of it. And I've got now another idea for a series that I want to do under a slightly different pen name maybe. And I've got all of these other things that are percolating and I can't do all of it. So I'm either going to have to do everything but less or cut some things out. So for the moment, we're going to try do everything but a little bit less. So hopefully in June and July, I'll update you a bit more. Summer months are usually better for me in general anyway. I'm hoping they will be better for me in a health sense as well going forward, knock on wood. Thank you for sticking with me if you've been here before the unplanned hiatus that has been April. If you did do April Camp, do let me know in the comments how yours went. I have been out of the loop with even videos. I've got like 600 watch later videos, so I'm way behind on everyone's Camp Nanowrimo. And if anyone has any tips for these kind of moments where, I don't want to say burnouts happened, but like it all just feels a bit much right now and I think I need to rest more. If anyone's got any ideas on how to rest, because I'm not convinced I know how to do that, please do drop them in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Nikki Starr and I will see you in the next one.